Welcome to the Lynn Community Television Show. I'm Sean Donahue. Here with me today from the Lynn Shelter Association, we have Director Margie St. Paul. Marjorie, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
As I continue the show, I'm going to call you Margie because we're friends. I love the work that you guys do down there. We're talking a little bit about the show. Some of the things that I want to touch base on are the growth, what your vision is for 2016, why there is so much growth. But first and foremost, for our viewership at home who may not be aware of who you are, what you do, and what the mission of the Lynn Shelter Association is, let's touch on that first.
Okay, sure. We're over 30 years old, and since the inception of Lynn Shelter Association, our mission's been exactly the same. Excuse me. It is our focused mission to provide shelter, services, and housing to both individual and family homeless here in Lynn.
That's it.
Same for 30 odd years.
Same mission, makes it easy every day to go in, you know what you're doing, you know what you're focused on.
Right.
Now Marjorie, you're one of the well-known people in Lynn, and a lot of it has to do with your advocacy, the efforts that you've put forth with your staff as well. The Lynn Shelter Association helps out tons of people throughout the year and throughout the decades too. And what we're seeing right now is a growth in this epidemic of homelessness. And it's scattered among separate categories or separate demographics of people. Now a big growing one is unaccompanied youth. We were talking about that before the program. Veterans, we're seeing homeless veterans out there. And then you've got people who are hardworking citizens. They've paid into their 401ks their whole entire lives, and they get a setback because of an injury or an illness. Right. So that's a big part of it. Now today, there's a lot of state funding that's available, a lot of grants. Is this something that you guys participate in, grants funding?
Yes. The majority of our funding is federal and state, HUD for housing, and the service component is basically state funded. Our sheltering is funded from the state, so our shelters, the adult shelter and our congregate shelters for families, are all state funded. And the housing components, shelter plus care, supportive housing, all come from federal dollars through HUD, Housing and Urban Development. The types of housing, HOPA, which is housing for people with AIDS, and the Veterans Housing Initiative for which we provide case management services, come from HUD, the case management component of it. But when you look at the types of people who are homeless and the way in which they become homeless, that's where things get really interesting. The Veterans Homeless Initiative in Lynn is at technical zero right now. We were able, over the last 3 years, with the help of the Bedford VA and with Lynn Housing Authority, best housing authority in the world, to identify every single veteran who was homeless, get their names, find out where they were, and work with them individually. Having done that and said that we're at effective zero, there's one person who chooses to live out, that means live outside of shelter, and one person who is in shelter plus care, and which we consider still to be a little bit underhoused, and who will eventually move into a different type of housing. That does not mean that veterans who are coming back from active duty will not find themselves homeless, but now we have a system in place to effectively work with them very quickly. So we've done a remarkable job in Lynn in working with the veterans population. So I don't say we're washing our hands, but we feel very content with the way in which we've structured it so that they will be helped quickly and effectively. Families, we've housed in the past 2 years in the state of Massachusetts over 7,000 families. There are still 1,800 in hotels and motels. The number grows continually. Every day at DTA, more families come in asking for emergency assistance. There are over 3,500 families in shelter. We have 3 congregate shelters. Just 2 years ago, we only had 1. Over the last 2 years, we've added 2 more. The number of homeless families is a result of the economics in the entire United States.
Right.
It's not just in Lynn, but here in Lynn, it is sorely felt. I mean, in Lynn, there's a horrifying statistic that indicates that a family would have to work 91 hours a week in order to pay their rent.
That's a big task to reach. I mean, working 40 hours a week is tough enough.
Yeah.
Majority of Americans put in 50, and those who need to make sure that their bills are paid are paying upwards over 60 hours a week
Right.
of their time. And
That's just their rent. We're not even talking about
food, clothing,
food or gas or their telephone or any of those
Internet.
other things. Yeah.
I think
Just their rent.
In my opinion, there has been a significant shift from 2000 to where we are today,
Right.
Especially when it comes to housing for every person, affordable housing. And I believe, in my opinion, that this stems from the information technology age, is where you're seeing a lot of factories kind of go out. So,
Yeah.
you know, some national stories to discuss Oldsmobile. You've had national buyouts. So
Right.
that industry aspect there, the ideal of creation and manufacturing is kind of on its way out.
But just think about where Lynn was.
Right.
We used to be a manufacturing city where everybody had a job.
Right.
That's gone.
Right. And the baby boomers generation is a big part of this. I mean, you've got people who are right around 40 to 50 years old who are part of the baby boomers generation. The baby boomers, for those of you who are younger and not a part of it, was a huge spike in birth rate here in America. And what it did was as a government, we had to set up a standard for Social Security and all that stuff to afford for the future. But now we're seeing that, you know, our economy just can't really stabilize this many people in one generation.
Right. And you're seeing a spike in the unaccompanied youth. And with that spike in unaccompanied youth being homeless, if that isn't contained and dealt with now, you will see that same spike in another 30 years in a giant spike in homelessness in the 40 to 60-year-old bracket, which makes them incredibly dependent on services within the city in which they live.
Let's talk about some of the services that you guys provide. We're coming off the subject of grant funding, and based on the demographics that you reach out to, families, you've got individuals, you've got unaccompanied youth, the state is willing to comply with what Lynn needs in order to address these issues. We're talking a little bit about the show, and we'll get back to it, but I do want to allude to it. PIT is a state government agency entity that you guys have been heading for a while, and this has to do with it. But before we get into that, I wanted to jump into, so we're talking about grants funding. Some of the other things that you guys do is community service. 2015, you renovated the emergency shelter. 2016, renovations are still on your list. This is a continuing effort that you guys are going to do, but you also have different types of fundraisers that are available. Also, one thing that you guys are doing is you're engaging this community of homelessness through projects, and I want to talk a little bit about the photo project before we get into PIT. What motivated this?
Our fundraising committee, our development committee, is run by a woman named Karen Bowden, but it is also energized by another woman who is our board president named Alison Brooks.
Alison Brooks.
Alison Brooks, she's British. She has the most energy of any person I've ever met. Between them, they came across this project that had been done in France, which was having the people who lived in the shelters take photos of what their life was like. And so now, and Karen Bowden applied for a grant, which we received from the City of Lynn Arts Council. And now we're having our guests take photos of what their life is like. And we have the assistance of many people in the city, as we've done with Alison's events before, which are always sort of a multicultural type of event with dance and music and other things. So this will be an event in which the city will hopefully get an idea of what it feels like for the homeless to be homeless, through the eyes of the homeless and through the faces of the homeless. Because we also have Susan Ogan, who is a photographer who's worked with us many, many times and does portraiture. And she has taken many portraits of the faces of the people who live in our shelters. So hopefully what we'll have is an event that will be held at the Lynn Museum under the aegis of Drew Russo, who's the new director there, and who also sat on our board of directors at one time. And I'm assuming that this will be a community event, as all of our events have been, with people from the restaurants in Lynn helping us with food. It has always been for us the community of Lynn, as it always is in Lynn, because we are a service-rich community, and every service in Lynn has always held hands and provided services for the homeless. It's a Gliss and Bridgewell and Neighborhood Legal and Lynn Community Health Center. We're always holding hands to form a safety net for everyone here.
I'd like for you to expand on these collaborations that you're talking about. The Lynn Housing Authority is a big one.
Oh my God.
Tell me about this. Tell me about
Lynn
the collaboration.
Housing Authority is amazing. First of all, without Lynn Housing Authority, there would be no housing for homeless people. They went out and got money and helped form the Lynn Pact, which is a group of service organizations that includes half the people, or all of the people that I talked about before: Project Cope, Neighborhood Legal, Gliss, did I say Bridgewell already? All of these different agencies that came together and said, yes, we help the homeless in this way and that way, millions of different ways, with mental health, with Elliot, I should mention quickly too, the police station, probation, Union Hospital. Oh, please don't let Union Hospital go away. All of these places that come together and form a way in which we interact with each other to make sure that homeless people have all of the services they need. And so together, as the Lynn Pact, under the aegis of the Lynn Housing Authority, they have worked with HUD to get funding in to provide housing, to provide services, to provide all of us with a way to have enough money to make sure that the services and the housing and the professional care is there for the homeless people in Lynn. And they do it in a way that seems seamless, but takes an enormous amount of effort. And under Charlie Gaeta's leadership, with Norm Cole, with Harry McCabe, with Olivia Lyons, who are the sort of mainstay of the Lynn Housing Authority, we've been able to perform miracles with very little money. But also because all of those other agencies have services that they bring to the table as well.
I think the point that I'm taking, and I'm hoping some of our viewers are taking at home, is that the money definitely gets things moving, but it's the service from the individuals that make it happen.
Yes.
And really,
and volunteers.
Yeah, the volunteering aspect of it is a big part of it. You know, I get approached in the city, you know, if I'm going into Dunk's to get a coffee, you know, hey, do you got any change? I literally don't. I mean, I work at a nonprofit, and I know I have a suit on.
But you volunteer.
But I do volunteer, you're right. So there's ways that you can give back. Now, that guy at the corner is never going to see me volunteering. But,
No.
you know, it doesn't mean that I can't go in there and get 99 cents worth of, you know, water for him on my credit card. I don't really carry a lot of cash around. So, you know, that's one way to give back. But the point that I'm trying to make is that a community is a family. And it's, I mean, I'm not trying to be softy TV show host guy or hit you in the feels. But if your citizenship is concerned about something, okay, and the subject that we're on right now is homelessness, all right, as opposed to complaining about it to the powers that be or reaming out the leadership, why don't you go and engage it and figure out where you can put forth some effort? And that was really my motivation this year. You know, go ahead, continue.
Well, I have to say, I mean, our adult emergency shelter was repainted, refloored, and rebedded by volunteers. We put out a call on social media for beds, and the churches gave money. People online gave money. We put out a call for volunteers, and GE laid the floors. Volunteers from a variety of different places came in to paint and put up that stuff, whatever that's called.
Molding?
Cove base or something like that. I never remember. But, and our guests, the shelter guests were there painting too.
So you've got some of these volunteers that come in. Some of them come from GE, Some have come from different organizations. How do these guys hear about you and hear about the opportunity to volunteer?
Well, sometimes they see us on Facebook. I'm a little bit more savvy with that now than I used to be. Some people see us on our website. Some people hear about us because of people like you who have me on TV. Some people will see us in the Daily Item. Some people hear about us from word of mouth, you know. I have great board members who talk about us all the time to everybody they can talk to us about. You know, it's a question of people who are interested just coming to our door sometimes.
Right.
And saying, what do you guys do? Hey, well, I can do that. Right. You know, so word spreads.
It's really not hard, back-breaking work. It's making their day a little easier, you know? And that's really all it is. I mean, there's somebody that you know who's homeless or on the brink of homelessness or that will be homeless. And they're going to need to reach out for these services. Right. You know, it's not a bad thing. It's something that needs to be addressed. We're working to heal it, you know? Yes. And it's like sometimes you've got to break a couple bones in order to make things happen. And that's the point that I'm trying to make is engage your community. Go out and do some service. And you'll quickly see that it's not as bad as the stigma.
It feels good.
And it does, it feels good.
It feels good.
I am selfish in a sense, and that's a big motivator as why I do any volunteering. It's because it makes me feel good, you know?
We call it a hand, not a hand out, but a hand up.
Right.
And it does make you feel really good. And we'll feed you.
And you get fed. That's true. I had about 3 cups of coffee that night. I was up until 4 in the morning. Got a lot of work done.
All right.
So we got about 3 minutes left in the program. I want to reserve this time for any upcoming events that you guys have, anything that you want to make our viewership privy to.
Yeah. You know, people remember the homeless at Christmas time. We have so many kids in our programs. They all have birthdays. It's one of the things that you can think about when you're thinking about reaching out and helping. If you're interested in doing something like that, you can contact any one of our congregate shelters and fulfill a birthday wish. It's something that's easily done. If you're thinking about something that you want to do for our adult shelter, we always need socks. We always need toiletries. We can always use pillows. Linens are always at a premium as well. There are so many ways in which you can help. You can always call me and I can give you suggestions. If you have a group of people that wants to come in and do something together, we had a group in just last Sunday that made what they called a healthy dinner at the shelter. That kitchen we have is tiny, tiny, tiny. They managed to fit 12 people in there. They had a great time. Our guests had a wonderful, healthy meal. There was a lot of laughter, a lot of conversation, and it was a fabulous night. And it's one of those things that helps everybody. But when you engage with a group of people and make our guests feel not that you're handing something over, but that you're sitting down with them and enjoying something together, you give them a sense that they are
worth your time.
Yeah. And it's not that they're anything less.
Right.
That they may be homeless, but they're not less. And that means so very much. Because the trauma that they endure, that they endured before they came to us, and that they continue to endure by the fact of their homelessness, is so wrenching that anything that makes them feel not that way, even for just an hour, is a gift. And this is something that you can do for them.
Outstanding to have you on the show, Marjorie. Margie St. Paul, the director over at the Lynn Shelter Association. You can reach out to them at their mailing address, 100 Willow Street. You can also give Margie a call at her office phone number, 781-581-0739. She's located at 91 Liberty Street. And if you're in any trouble, or if you know somebody who is, call the shelter directly, 781-581-6600. You mentioned the sock drive before. Just to let our viewership know at home, we will be organizing a sock drive through Lynn Community Television and in cooperation with St. Mary's High School. So if you have any socks, we're looking for tube socks. White is preferable, black is fine. You can deliver them here at our temporary office, 302 City Hall, or you can bring them on down to St. Mary's High School from the studio here at Lynn Community Television. That's it for the Lynn Community Television Show. I'm Sean Donahue, wishing you all the best.